Morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Collier Fabian. I am a lead solutions engineer with Nimble AMS, and I am joined by a face many of you I'm sure recognize, Mr. Jake Adler.
My name is Jake Adler. I'm the CTO with American Society for Surgery of the Hand.
And there's an on button on there, I think. And there it is. Software is easy. Hardware is tough, guys. Hardware is tough. Yeah. And so, as said, what we want to talk about briefly this morning is the importance and the value of trust. In particular, how to make sure that you have set up technology that your staff, your members, the entire life cycle of your association, that they're able to trust. And in order to set the stage a little bit for this, I want to talk briefly about who we are. And in order to understand that and understand how important trust really can be, I want to explain our parent company. So as was stated, I work for Nimble AMS, which is an association management software at enterprise level, but we are one slice of the pie that is community brands. And as we talk about trust, it's really important to recognize how, as we build out our software ecosystem, we have a lot of different interconnected solutions that are going to work together. Using community brands as an example, we're located up there on the top left, membership management software. But looking just underneath that, like many of us do, we also have learning management solutions, whether we're talking exam taking, course content, video, et cetera. Moving over to the, right-hand side, up top, we have a career center. Community brands does offer a career center. Fun fact, that is for the current age of millennial and Gen Zs, that is the #1 desired aspect of joining a professional association. And I'll tell you where I learned that in just a second. But it also is a source of non-dues revenue as well. Underneath there, we have event management. We've had some great examples this morning already about how companies may be pivoted from in-person events, virtual hybrid, back to being in the same room together like we are this morning. And the rounding us out on the bottom with community brands, but with many of you, we have fundraising. Some of you may have heard of our GiveSmart platform. Or over on the left, we have data and analytics. For community brands, that's Nucleus, the first and only association-specific data and visualization tool. So when you look at trust, and if you're a representative, you're looking at an AMS, you're looking at an LMS, you're looking at a new financial system, all of these things as they come together really drive home the importance of having an ecosystem that you can trust. Now, this is Nimble AMS. I'm sure most of you have heard of Salesforce, which is the world's #1 CRM, which we are built on top of. But if we look, oh, geez, this is hard to see. Well, go with me on it. If we look across the bottom, this cloud area here, those are the things that Salesforce brings to Nimble AMS. As I'm sure some of you can't see them, I'll just hit a couple points. Automation tools, artificial intelligence, business intelligence, collaboration, et cetera. And when we say we're built on Salesforce, we're built on top of all of those tools. But right up in the middle where you see Nimble AMS, that's where we bring the association-specific things. So we bring in things like memberships, subscriptions, membership types, rock solid accounting, et cetera. And we bring that onto the Salesforce platform. And then we extend that, like Salesforce extends that, to the left and to the right with various on-cloud platforms. That's Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud. Some of you may be experienced with those. And then over on the other side, the App Exchange, where there are literally tens of thousands of various plug-and-play solutions that you can bring right into your ecosystem. And as you do that, you're expanding this envelope, this window of things that your members are going to rely on, that your staff is going to use, that they need to trust. Now, I started with being built on Salesforce because Salesforce defines trust as their #1 value. That is to say, it is important with how they engage with their customers. Trust is at the forefront. It's important with how they manage data. Salesforce has access to all kinds of data across all industries. And it's important to how they build out their ecosystem. Trust. And one of the key factors, and there's a lot, but the one that I really liked, is in a study, they determined that 88% of Salesforce customers believe that trust is more important during times of change. And I'm sure no one in this room has been through a time of change in the last few years. But say hypothetically you had, your members were coming to you valuing that trust even more. And so Salesforce has it as the #1 value, and we've carried that into Nimble AMS, into our approach as we build out that membership picture, because we also feel that same value, not just from Salesforce, but as we've done our own research. I mentioned that point about career centers being the #1 point. That's because some of you may know, every year Community Brands does an industry-wide survey. We do small to large associations, we do professional staff, we do members. And for the second year in a row, over 80% of those surveyed, of the association professionals, so not the members, over 80% viewed maintaining their members' trust not only as a top priority, but as a mandate for growth. So 4 out of every 5, a little bit more, frankly, so like 4.1 out of every 5 people thought that if you wanted to grow, the first thing you had to have was your members' trust. And the nuances for the responses on that were varied, as one would expect, right? But looking at it kind of logically, if you want your staff to use their tools, right? You want them to be logging into the system. You want them to be using the LMS that you've selected, the AMS that you're paying for. They have to trust that as they look up records, they're going to be right. As they make changes, it's going to be reflected. That's bar one. If they don't trust it, they're probably not going to use it. That extends to your members too. You know, they log in to the profile and they update their email address, or they update their physical address, or change some bits of information. They have to trust that they're going to start getting emails to that address. If they don't, are they going to log in? Are they going to update? Are you going to know their contact information? And then stepping back from those specific instances a little bit, there's also that partnership. Again, when associates and professionals are looking for additional software providers, when they're looking at a new platform for fundraising, they have to believe that this platform, that they can trust that it'll serve their needs, not only today, but into the future. Would anyone buy something knowing right away it was going to go obsolete tomorrow? That trust, did I see a hand? No, okay, good. We'll talk later. But that has to be, that confidence and that trust is critical as you're building out an ecosystem into the future. And in order to cover that, we've kind of broken this, like you saw, into 3 things: trusted ecosystem, trusted tools, and trusted partnerships. So with that backstory, I'm sure as you've all been waiting, I want to bring Jake into the conversation here. And we want to talk about these 3 pillars a little bit more dynamically. And I was going to ask you specifically about trusted ecosystem, but I forgot my question. So I'm going to get there in a roundabout way. And I'm going to ask you, when American Society for Surgery of the Hand was first looking for a new AMS back in 2015?
Yes.
Okay.
2015.
2015. All right. What were some of the factors that made you feel confident about Salesforce, about Nimble AMS, about all the options that you looked at? What brought that trust through for you?
So we were watching the ecosystem for all of these platforms, and we decided pretty early on that Salesforce was going to be the platform we were going with.
Mm-hmm.
We're a pretty small organization in members and in staff, so we need a lot of bang for your buck in what we implement. And in talking with Nimble AMS specifically, we felt that their culture and their attention to us was aligned with where we wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And it was proven pretty quickly that we made the right decision in how we implemented our software and how well it worked quickly, and the adoption in our staff, and the lack of complaints that we had
Mm-hmm.
on staff, and in how members used it right away.
So the lack of complaints I'm hearing was kind of as you got into using the tool, right? As you had adopted Nimble AMS, move forward with it. Were there things that came about while you were still evaluating all of your options that made certain vendors seem more trustworthy than others? Was there something about it that made you think, I believe this? And please don't say it was a bunch of demos, because I am a solutions engineer and I don't need to do any more.
It was not demos. And as a technologist, I think it's more looking at how Salesforce does things.
Mm-hmm.
We like that the platform incorporates a lot of things, that they're always bringing new updates. None of these updates seem to break any of their previous clients that we talked with systems in general.
Right.
So we had a lot of trust in what their platform brought, and then what Nimble ended up building on top of it.
Excellent. And I want to make sure that we point out that you said you were a smaller association, which we could debate, but you're still doing some really big, important things for the sake of your industry. We have a snapshot here. So ASSH built a fellowship application using Salesforce Flows, which is basically a screen-guided walkthrough to collect data. And I'm summarizing, stop me if I get off base here, but to collect information to be able to build out additional context. And this fellowship application, any surgeon in the US who wants to have a specialty in hand or extremity surgery has to fill out this exact application at some point.
Yeah, this started pretty early on. We needed buy-in from every hand fellowships in the country to use a universal application, first of all. And previously, what they sent in were these giant packets of information to every hospital system that they wanted to be a fellow at. So transitioning this to a pretty easy to use and easy to enter system on top of Salesforce, which is very dependable and integrated with the Nimble platform for all the information, kind of kicks off the stickiness that we want for our members. So early on in their career, we grab them, we know all of their information, and we can keep them in our scope of membership throughout their career.
And what does this do in terms of the time for the applicant?
What they would previously do is go to a UPS store or something like that and print out something like 20 applications and mail them everywhere throughout the country with specific letters. And it took them days and days to put all this together. Realistically, now they still have to write some kind of a CV. They have to write a personal statement, but they can just copy and paste it into our form. If you have Google Forms, you can have it auto enter a bunch of information. And then all of this flows into the fellowship program system. So we save time both from our members, our prospective members situations, all the way through to fellowship directors and fellowship coordinators, where they can download all the information, organize it properly, feed it into their interview system. So it saves a lot of times on a lot of different fronts.
Got it. And so fellowship application, great example of ASSH primarily, frankly, taking the bull by the horns with this and developing a tool through Salesforce Flows that allows them not only to make life easier for yourselves, for your members, but this was a considerable source of non-dues revenue as well.
Yeah, we ended up, we charge an application fee, and it's not for revenue. It's to encourage people not to apply to every fellowship in the country, which many of them still do, even at a ramped up cost per application, which is thousands of dollars, and they still do it because it's easy to do. But we ended up with something like $250,000 a year in revenue just because we have an online system and that we offer it for free to these applicants and to these fellowship programs.
And so that's a tool. So we've kind of already crossed into tools, right? That was the first tool that you built because of the capability of the ecosystem. There's another tool that we talked about last week, a newer one. Could you tell us a little bit more? This is the coding tool?
Yeah, so we try and be sticky throughout our membership process. So anytime that a hand surgeon needs something in their career, we try and make sure that we deliver it to them or have an avenue for them to get that information, whether it's education or practice. And in this instance, we realized that the tools out there for surgeons weren't sufficient in delivering the information that they needed for medical coding. So what we did is we built a progressive web application, which it's a fancy way of saying website that works on native devices like apps that Google is pioneering a lot to deliver all this information to surgeons and for them to share it with their staffs for medical billing. So on the left-hand side, you'll see here the homepage for the application divided up by anatomy. They can save things to their favorites. They can build code combos. They can compare codes so they can get accurate billing. And then on the right side, you'll see we built a website using a Salesforce digital experience for the experts in coding in the country in hand and upper extremity coding to actually build this database for people to compare all of this information.
And to bring it back, that's, first of all, super awesome. Hats off to you. But to bring it back to trust a little bit, how important would you say, based off of your experience, how important is it that when a physician goes in to reference a code in your database, how important is it that they can trust the data that they're seeing and that they believe it to be accurate? And with this tool or with any of the other ones?
It's extremely important, especially in medicine and medical coding. You can get in a lot of trouble by billing the wrong things. And so you really want to trust this system to pull up the accurate information from the foremost experts in the country on what that information is.
Sidebar, when my son was born, they accidentally charged us because they had to pull him out by his head. They charged us for removing the top of his skull on accident because they messed up the code. So when Jake was telling me about this tool, they didn't do that, guys. It's okay. He was fine. But when he was telling about this tool, you can get in a lot of trouble if you know, it's like, or you could scare the pants off of a new dad when you get the wrong code. So incredible capability of tools. To that end, I have that personal experience for being able to trust the data, but I'm sure the physicians as well will put a lot of value in that. The third cornerstone that we want to talk about as we break trust into these three particular areas is a trusted partnership. And we've talked about why your physicians need to trust. We've talked about why your staff needs to trust as it terms of the data, the records that they're looking at. But it's important to look at the tools and the ecosystems can only, if you really want them to be effective, and this is kind of an opinion thing, but I would go so far as to say you can only really trust them if it's built on a foundation of a partnership that you do trust, right? Like the tool is great, but you're not sure about where you're getting it from. You're going to start to lose some of that. So what would you say are some of the key examples or key tenets that you've experienced that show you're working with a solution provider that you can trust?
So early on, when we implemented this software, we didn't really know how to maintain it or build anything on it. So I'd say that Nimble did a lot to fish for us at the beginning while teaching us how to fish. So we learned a lot during that process, and we've been on Nimble AMS for almost 8 years, or about 8 years now. So we've proven ourselves through their education. We kind of learned how to maintain the system, how to update it, and then how to build new software solutions on top of it, turning ourselves into a mini software company. So what we did was we relied on them a lot at the beginning. They taught us in the meantime, and then we learned on our own afterwards. And I'd say that being on the Salesforce ecosystem was really great because our lead developer, Gladys, goes to the Trailhead X developer conference every year, learns a lot. She's actually talked with people how to fix their solutions through Salesforce boards. So having that community out there and having that trust in Nimble to kind of educate us and support us. We had a ticket open this week just to fix something, and we had a response the same day. So we work with the same people we've worked with for a long time, and we really trust the system we're on.
And you're kind of touching on it, and I'm going to steal some of the attention from our friends at Impexium this morning, who had the big point about making it fun. And yeah, obviously it wasn't working for Nimble at the time you guys implemented, but I know that's a big part of it. The transition from let us catch you fish so you can eat, then let us teach you how to fish so you can do it yourselves, and then we're still here. You know, if you want to throw a fish fry and you need a little extra, we're going to be around. But that transition can be hard to balance. But I think that's an aspect of a good partner as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. We still do rely on your developers sometimes for updates to things that we do, and obviously for the updates to your platform. But generally speaking, we were taught how to do everything on our own too.
You mentioned updates, upgrades. How important would you say that is as it reflects in the trusted partnership? I mean, is that a big part of it? Is that a nice to have?
It is. It's a big part of it because we want a modern system, and we want to continue having a modern system. Unfortunately, we've gotten in the pace just out of our board's decisions of creating a software solution yearly for different things, which I would never recommend. But for the past 3 years, that's what we've been doing. So we've fallen a little bit behind on some of the best updates from Nimble, but that's our fault. And they've made it completely available. And better yet, it hasn't broken anything that we already have implemented through the release. So it's kind of an opt-in type of technology.
Awesome. Thank you. And that kind of wraps up the points, but this wouldn't be a technology conference if we didn't have a few minutes to talk about AI, right? So since we're talking about trust, and go with me on this, how important, I've said that a lot. How much do you think about, as we're starting to see more and more opportunity presented with AI, right? At first it was generative images, then generative text and answers. How does trust play into the opportunity that's posed by AI? Because we do hear a lot. I mean, you can't read an article about AI without hearing an example of when something was gotten wrong or data was missed. Am I right in thinking that trust has a lot to do with the willingness to start to adopt some of these? Because data in what you do, particularly, and what all of us do, is so important. Is that how am I reading the barometer on that right?
Our members are surgeons. They cannot trust generative AI to create the things that they're educating fellow surgeons on. But what they can do is use it as kind of a librarian to look up information that they produced. I'm a little bit afraid as a technology leader in association about what generative AI can do. I've heard my voice developed into a generative AI platform and just heard myself talk before. So what happens if someone calls my employee and asks them to buy $1,000 worth of gift cards? That's a possibility in the future, and we have to train for that. But generative AI, I think it's a lot of hype and it can be useful, but we need to be careful in the future.
Sure. So you're of the opinion that technology has to earn its way into your ecosystem?
Definitely.
And do you think that the Salesforce platform gives you the ability to say no to those things until it's appropriate.
Absolutely. And I think that they have partnerships with some of the bigger companies like OpenAI and
Mhm.
things like that too. So we have the right tools. We just need to think about it as we implement them.
Right on, right on. Jake, thank you very much.
Thank
Just want to wrap up very briefly. Trust is key. Even before we talked about AI, it's important for all of us, from our members to our staff, to be able to trust all this data, all this information. If any of you are operating on a home built or perhaps a dinosaur of an AMS, and you have questions about whether there's ways that you could get data more reliable and whether it's more you can trust, Jake would be thrilled to talk to you. I would be thrilled to talk to you. But thank you for that time. And I don't know how we're running up on the end, but if there are any questions, we would love to take them.
Any questions? And remember, there's a little gray button at the base of the stem. Just press it once, green light come on, and you're hot to go. That's for the audio. There is a couple of questions here. One is, what is your favorite or coolest integration since you've been working with such an interesting and expansive ecosystem like Salesforce?
My favorite's always the latest one. So we created a progressive web application using some of Nimble's technology, the Nimble integration framework, to surface that information externally. So using the Nimble integration framework, we can actually very quickly spin up APIs and offer that information to external systems. A lot of our systems are Salesforce. We use Salesforce accounting through Financial Force. We use a lot of Salesforce systems out of the box, but we also implement externally for, say, our LMS or any other thing through Nimble software.
Great. And you mentioned earlier about selecting or choosing a platform or an ecosystem. For those of us that are contemplating a move or a change up, are there any metrics you would suggest they kind of consider as they pursue their next system?
So I think that even Jonathan mentioned this earlier. Using a system out of the box is really key. Trying to listen to people that have strong opinions about how to do things just because we've done them a certain way in the past is not the way to go. So whichever system you choose, try to use the system. Try not to make them develop roundabout ways to do things, because it ends up being kind of a catastrophe later on.
That's good. That's good.
That's great. Trust.
Trust.